it's like a story of like an advisor to the White House during the 80s that was trying to figure out how to like negate any kind of like nuclear conflict. He's like, well, what if we took the nuclear codes, put it in a pill, and then we had someone who was always around the president, and we put that surgically implanted that pill next to his heart, and then he carried around a knife. And if the president wanted to start a nuclear war, he would have to literally stab an innocent person to start a nuclear war. And all the other advisors, like, that's insane. If the president had to kill someone to start a nuclear war, then he would never do it. You're like, yeah, that's the point.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. Oh yeah, yet again. Yeah. Dude, today's wild. I've been working out with a buddy of mine just recently, and this morning he broke his finger.
Oh no.
He was swinging from one chin-up bar to another, you know, like you do as a kid on the gym or in the playground or whatever. And as he went to grab the second bar, he stabbed it instead with his finger.
Oh man.
And like chipped a bone, and like his tendon needs to be reattached.
Jeez.
But yeah, he figured it was broken, but he's like, well, I just can't use my hand. So we did a bunch of stuff that, I mean, I don't know working out much, but we did a bunch of stuff that like where he didn't have to grab with his hand. And then he texted me later, like, yeah, it's all this. It's going to be like a month of recovery or whatever. And then we were framing walls at work today, and it rained, and just like everything went wrong. Then my phone died. So it's been a bit of a day.
I guess that's a big sign of age, is that you can't even be on monkey bars anymore without going to the hospital.
I'll tell him that.
Yeah.
I actually, he just texted me that he needs to move a bunch of stuff because he's got a garage door guy coming, and then he sent me a picture of his hand. It's all like bandaged up, and then I just replied about moving stuff. I was like, oh shoot, do you need a hand? And then I was like, oh man, no pun intended. But I wish I had intended it. But
the workout injuries can suck. Especially, I know one of my friends knocked out his tooth because he has never done workouts like ladders where you like go up in weight and then down in weight. So he was doing curls with heavier weights, and then he went to a lighter weight and he just smacked himself in the mouth with a dumbbell. So that was like his first time like really working out. Just injury. Really.
Wow. Unbelievable. I mean, well, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I've never really done any working out before, so this is kind of new for me. So it's pretty fun. Kind of getting some pump on, you know.
It's nice. Nice to get in the habit of that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm typically quite lazy, so it's nice to. It's a good reminder knowing someone's there. Like, come on, man. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that your workout partner got out for a month.
Yeah,
ruining that ability to build a habit on it.
Yeah, we'll see. He'll probably figure something out. You know, do a lot of squats or something, a lot of leg days.
Sure.
But yeah. Today we got Chuck with us after a long and arduous connection process, but it worked out. We got him now, and we're excited to hear about
computers.
Yeah, he's Air National Guard, so kind of. Let's see. I think we've had Air Force. I don't know that we've had Air National Guard. Oh yeah, we've had one other National Guard. I don't like to get meta. Let's make it about you. Okay. What's your background?
My background's exclusively intelligence. I've only had one AFSC in the whole time I've been in, so just intel overall.
Yeah. What was your why did you join? What was your main
I,
like? There's a lot of motivations, I'm sure, but what were some of them?
hmm. Yeah, my main motivation was just because I thought that was just what you did. It never really crossed my mind to wonder why. Just grew up in the post 9/11 era. I was 7 when that happened, so
Sure.
um, it really, you know, crafted or formed my personality growing up because it was just the media about it, video games about it, everything about it, movies, everything was crafted around the Middle East and the conflicts there. So I was just didn't think deeply about it, just was exposed to it. So I was like, when you turn 18, you join the military, and that's what I did.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 So just old enough to remember. I mean, there's definitely
Hmm.
I remember it happening, but yeah, people say like the what Martin Luther King getting shot. No, JFK getting shot, or Pearl Harbor, or the landing on the moon. Those kind of things you always remember, like a super big event or whatever. But
Yeah, I wasn't
yeah,
watching TV, but I just remember my parents' reaction more than I remember the actual events
right,
of that day.
right, yeah, yeah, huh, yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Do you remember like a pre 9/11 America, or are you is or I mean, not much, I would think.
Yeah, as a kid, there probably wasn't much of a difference between uh, pre and post at that age. I went to school. I did tornado drills. I played in the playground. Like there wasn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a whole contrast between that. Just maybe as I got older, the media was different. But I wasn't paying any attention to that as a kid.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. I bet older generations notice it most. But yeah, I hear about that a lot. Just and I kind of remember some of it. There definitely was a difference in just like the patriotic fervor and everything, especially for multiple years after. I guess maybe less so now.
Yeah,
But
so I just thought that it was always like that because that's my
right, right,
perception of perception of the political climate is all post 9/11.
right. Yeah, 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 for sure. Huh. Interesting. So yeah, yeah. So what was your recruitment process like? Was it a lot of people, you hear, oh well, the recruiter, he didn't tell me this or whatnot. What was that kind of like for you?
Yeah, the line that I was exposed to was more just what they don't tell you, or just kind of hyping it up, I guess. So the
Mm. Oh sure.
I didn't really get like I went and sought it out. I went to the base there, and they wanted me to join originally like a cyber security type role.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting. Uh, and then I went and took my went to MEPS, scored good mid 90s on my ASVAB, uh, but it was the end of the fiscal year, and that means that they can't guarantee a single thing past
Right.
September 30th. October 1's a brand new year, and they hooked me because like, well, it's only 2 days, and we don't know if the bonus will be here anymore. We don't know if there will even be a spot open. And anyone who knows anything about that just knows that's pretty much bullshit. So
Right. Right.
like a bonus is going to be there whether uh, there's like two reasons a bonus is available for a military position. It's either people get out after getting that job because it's a really good paying job on the outside, or it
Mm.
sucks, and people get
Right.
out because they don't like it.
Right. Right.
Uh, and I learned that mine was because it kind of sucks. So uh, they hyped it up, talking about it being uh, a lot of jobs on the outside, which is big if you're in some kind of guard component because you have to have a normal person job on top of being a guardsman.
Right. Right.
But back in just a second, when I went after I got my MEPS done and my ASVAB done, and I went to uh, back to the base. They're like, oh well, all the comm spots are filled up. Sorry, but there's intel. We can get some officers over here to talk to you.
Right.
And so they're like, you got these two options, and I was like, well, I mean, any kind of hindsight or any kind of like hindsight would have told me just wait a week and see
Right,
what's
right.
available.
And the week would
Um,
have put you into the new fiscal year.
New fiscal year,
Oh
there would have
man.
been the same bonuses, but more positions open.
Right,
Would have got to go into the job I was originally talking to people about at base. So,
right.
but Intel, I got Intel. It's fine. It's basically just writing papers is what Intel.
Oh,
Depending on
okay.
your job,
Sure.
obviously, but mine was my specific mission at my base was essentially writing research papers.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Huh. I wouldn't think of that. Okay. So you're basically like taking data and then creating publications for inside the military or whatever, correct?
Yeah,
Kind of.
yeah.
Okay.
We'll have a mission that we're supposed to, you know, we're looking at X, and so we're going to look at all the previous reporting of that and formulate a report that they may or may not use. It might just be put on a shelf. It might be supporting some kind of plan there, just in case something happens, some kind of contingency. But in the beginning, because it was mostly just cataloging, archiving.
Mm-hmm.
So you do the stuff, it goes into the infinite SIPRnet, and
Right.
it's
Right.
you might never be used ever, most likely.
That's a bummer. Not a lot of job satisfaction there.
No, there's not a
That's
lot
a
of like
bummer.
seeing the fruits of your labor.
Right. Right. Huh. Yeah. Because like my impression when I hear intelligence, I think of like either data collection or like data filtering, I guess, like where
Yeah,
you're getting this, just downloading a whole bunch of
aggregate.
data.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like figuring out what's important and what gets thrown away or whatever, or just set aside, whatever. But huh. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you
We
have at least some application, but yeah, not knowing if it's ever gonna be of value to anybody.
yeah
Huh.
we did some of that. There was a lot of data aggregation because there's a lot out there, but yeah, in the beginning there wasn't really a mission, just more like, hey, this stuff hasn't been looked at in a decade. You want to look at it? And I'm like, sure. And,
Right.
and later on, it got more specific because they liked our work, so it'd be a little more timely, but it's still mostly a just in case scenario.
Right. Right. Yeah. Huh. Well, yeah. That's. I mean, people talk all the time about like, um, the IRS has plans to has a plan on how they would continue their taxing if there was a nuclear attack on the U.S. So there's
Sure,
all these kinds of like crazy hypothetical possibilities that the military or government just creates plans for or does studies on, and you're like,
yes.
that
Priorities
is
like
probably never
taxes
going to
and
be needed. And if it does, who's going to care?
yeah, really, just ways to justify spending and justify the positions for the probably.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what what is your like your daily interaction with folks? Like, is there like a camaraderie in the, because you hear like guys in the trenches, they're getting shot at, obviously. Even if you hate this guy, there's sufficient external pressure to enable you to at least get along, if not actually like really support each other. But with less of that kind of pressure on your job, not that you hate people that you work with, but like, what's the camaraderie like levels? Is it pretty friendly, or is it just like, well, we're all in this job together and it sucks? Or
It's probably a little harder to maintain than a job like you described, like some kind of frontline work where you're working together, sweating together, bleeding together.
sure.
That we kind of we sit next to each other at desks and whatnot, and there's some people who are really good about just creating camaraderie. They want to do events together. They want to go do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't say the work necessarily brings you together in Intel. Um,
Sure.
there was some things that we've done or that I've done that adds camaraderie. My time in the honor guard. well, obviously it's a little more hands-on. You have to really be in sync with each other, make it look good, and not fuck up or
Sure.
anything. So,
Sure.
um, and the schooling was sure a lot more camaraderie because it's even though it's Air Force and it's basic training, it's still they try to simulate some amount of real world or
Okay.
being like hard in the military, being tough and breaking you down to your basic parts and then building you back up as a team. So
Right.
in my training, there was a good amount of camaraderie. It's a little harder what in the day to day job.
Right. 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 Sure. Was yeah. I mean, you haven't gone through any other boot camps, but like just from what you've heard, how would you compare Air Force to the other boot camps?
Uh, it
Obviously
it's
easier. Let's be real.
it's definitely easier. I was solely or very unimpressed when I went through basic training.
Yeah.
They tried to make it intimidating and they yelled, but uh, it was post some Air Force basic training scandals. So they weren't allowed to really put their hands on you, or they really weren't
Right.
supposed to cuss at you, or unless they kind of knew you guys were chill or weren't going to like report them, they'd probably let the mask fall a little bit.
Right.
Ours was pretty chill, but yeah, they had been in some hot water right before. Not my instructor, but the Air Force and overall with their
Sure.
training. But uh, it was I mean, it was hard for someone who wasn't like maybe not in their top physical shape because I mean a lot of the people who go to Air Force basic training
Right.
aren't. They're more of an intellectual, I guess, is the nice way to put it.
Yes, that's the nicest way to put it, I bet.
Yeah, yeah. We had belts that we had to wear at basic training that basically for cardio that indicated how fast your PT time, your run time was.
Oh, right.
And so when we did our group PT, the people with the lesser belts would be like red belts, and then it's red, yellow, uh, green, and blue. Blue's
Uh-huh.
like you're at the higher tier of running.
You're almost
So
good
you
enough to like join the Marines or something.
yeah, almost a real military person.
Right, right.
Um, but we on our in our little lap area, our track, we would have to the people with the higher gradient of belt would have to run on the furthest lane so that they would
Oh,
get
yes.
because it was more about running a certain time, not running a certain distance.
Okay.
So the people who couldn't run as far still got to have the same amount of running time,
Right.
and then the people, I guess, to make the people so that they could just time it. There wasn't because we didn't really have like trails. We just had a one big track,
Right.
and so
Right.
the people that were better runners could still get the most out of it, making
Sure.
them run further.
Huh. Interesting.
But yeah, it was relatively hard physically, just because I wouldn't say I was the best shape I ever was when I joined.
Sure.
Probably got more so in the technical like training that I did because I was just stuck in Texas, for 6 months. So without a car or anywhere to go, you kind of just go to the gym.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it was the basic training was fine. I was expecting more because that's not necessarily what I was initially going to go to join the military for. But yeah, it was
Yeah. Yeah, so was Air National Guard your first choice or what?
fun.
Well, yeah, actually I have
Definitely
another question, but I'll make a note because I don't want to forget.
okay.
But yeah, was that your first choice?
Definitely not. I would say probably only a couple months before I joined the Air National Guard, I didn't know it was a thing that existed.
Oh.
Because I was 18, I think I was about to turn 19, and was just working full time, looking for my like where I was going to move, like how I was going to enter the military, and I was going to, I guess, transition into just the regular National Guard in the state that I was currently living in at the time.
Okay.
Uh, but then I hadn't moved out of my parents' house when I was 19 yet because I think I joined like 2 weeks after I turned 19, so I had to move with them, and uh, ended up moving down there, and uh, I just there's like, hey, look at this thing. It's called the Air National Guard. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I'm, I want to be a helicopter pilot. I don't think that the Air Force really flies helicopters, from what I understand. That's more
Right.
armies and warrant officers, which is what I was thinking about doing. Maybe get part of pararescue was my goal, but didn't happen because I just wanted to, you know, make my parents happy because they were super stressed out about me being deployed.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like the Air Force. You're here. I'm like, okay, well,
Right.
maybe I'll be able to switch later, um, which wasn't in the cards for other reasons, just
Sure.
change of beliefs and whatnot as my time in the military came to an end. But
Mm.
yeah, I wasn't my first choice. Was going to be either some kind of pararescue unit or some kind of helicopter pilot was the goal. It was really broad because I really didn't do a whole lot of research into how I would do that. I would just plan on talking to a recruiter and say, "This is what I want. Like,
Mm.
how do I get
Mm-hmm.
there?" Which I probably would have been completely deceived doing
Right.
that too.
Sure.
But my options were very pigeonholed by joining the or bottlenecked when I joined the Air National Guard.
Sure. Well, and in that MOS, I would assume that it's hard to transfer even within the Air National Guard. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Just because of the
it's
training
pretty
involved.
hard. I'm not sure the nuts and bolts of it, but it has been described to me that transitioning from guard to active is extremely hard. They don't really
Oh,
want to
sure.
give you a seat,
Right.
so I want to give the shiny new 18-year-olds that don't know how the military works yet the seats so they can mold them correctly.
Right.
They don't want the salty 24-year-old from the Air National Guard.
Right. Yeah, I was you kind of referenced that how you didn't really know how it worked, but I also don't. What how is the national, like the Air National Guard, how is that different from the Air Force? You mentioned that you also have a full-time job. Is it like where you have one weekend a month and then
Yeah,
2 weeks a year or something like that?
yeah. The Air National Guard is to the Air Force as the National Guard is to the Army. It's like
Okay.
home stations, um, CONUS, like in the United States, and you do your 2 days a month or one week in a month, and
Hmm.
your additional training, which is 15 days a year, and then any orders they can give you because you can support active duty mission from your base
Okay.
if you have a job like mine where it's computer based.
Gotcha. And National Guard is deployable, correct? Is Air National the same? Not necessarily your
Yes.
MOS, but in
Yeah, we're
general.
all deployable. Positions like Intel or computer based, like if you were in cyber or what they call deploy it in house or deploy like you basically just like when I would get orders that was basically from the pot of an active duty base, and they would just delegate that days and dollars to us, and we would just work from our base in our state for them.
Oh, okay, sure,
But
sure.
if your mission was air, because most AFSCs there's going to be a guard base that has that as well,
Hmm.
so you could be like uh, vehicle maintenance or like C-130 maintenance or whatever your AFSC is, and if you got activated or you were going to do training, go you would deploy to like an actual uh, base, like Air Force, like Air National Guard could go support Air Force missions like in the Middle East.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Huh.
Just basically like a reserve. Uh, if you think of it like that, it's the same
Hmm.
purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. They probably get the same level of respect from the regular Air Force as the National Guard does in, or the reserves even in from from like the army or something. I would think.
Yeah, so sometimes they're pleasantly surprised. We some because not to try to puff up the National Guard or the National Guard, but there are people who are really gun ho, but they just have a family and they didn't want to deploy, so they're like a guard unit. So when they do get to go on like a short deployment, they're real enthusiastic, they're motivated, you know. So
Hmm.
sometimes the active duty unit is rather impressed by their performance because they're not, you know, burnt
Sure.
out. They're not they haven't been on station for, you know, a year and a half.
Hmm.
They're still shiny and new.
Yeah. Yeah. Not war weary, I guess.
Yeah, and the typically you don't change AFSCs or duty positions or duty stations even in the guard, so you end up having a lot of like carryover knowledge. Like um, I
Mm,
know that you with some of the bases that we support that were active duty was, you know, you might be there for 6 months to a year, then you're off to the next duty station, next mission.
right.
So we have a lot of like carryover of knowledge. So we're just kind of like a reservoir of, oh, we
Sure.
need to all of our airmen are kind of sucky at this job, but if we go talk to the National Guard base, they have this wealth of knowledge backed up because the same guy's been doing the same work for 15 years.
Right. Right. Huh. The
It's a balance. It's a weird balance.
yeah. Is it common for people to have an entire career in the Air National Guard?
Uh, yes, there's plenty
Okay.
of people who retired out of our base that were National Guard their whole career. Um,
Sure.
call them
Huh,
National
okay.
Guard babies.
Interesting. So you're saying it's uncommon for you to get orders if you're in the Air National Guard, it's uncommon for you to get assigned a new base, correct? Is that
Yeah,
what you said?
you wouldn't move to a new base. You might go on what's like called like a temporary deployment
Okay.
um, for anywhere from, you know, a couple weeks, 6 months, maybe a year, where you would just support their mission on their dollars. You're basically just like
Mhm.
freelance, but you still belong to that base that you're from.
Okay. What's it like if you want to move like to a completely different area? Is that easy or difficult or do you know?
Uh, it depends on your leadership a little bit.
Mm.
Some people don't live anywhere close to where our base was, and they get put on what's called like quarterly drills. So instead of one weekend a month, it's like uh, 6 days every quarter. You know, so it's they try to do like 3 months at one time. They come out and you have to get
Oh,
approval from your
sure.
leadership to do that. But you could also, if you're moving somewhere, you could try to see or kind of plan to see if maybe the base, like whatever that state's base has a similar mission. You can just switch, or if you really wanted to stay in, just find a different AFSC at a base near you.
Mhm.
There's
Okay.
options. It is a little difficult. There is more hoops to jump through than if you were just a normal person moving.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. But not as difficult probably as regular military. I mean,
Well, yeah,
and
I mean,
you
you
can
go
never.
wherever they tell you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can. I mean, I guess you could request a transfer, but unlikely. You'd have to be,
yeah.
yeah, different. Interesting, huh? So it definitely does sound like more of a what do they call it? Civilian military or civilian. Uh,
Yeah, a citizen soldier type deal.
that's it. Thank you. Yep. and and that's why we have guests to keep me in line. Oh boy. um. Yeah. So what would you say like overall? The whole experience, how would you say, or what am I trying to say? What would you say is the biggest benefit that you gained from being in, like whether it be personally or physically, or just like life experience or any of that?
I definitely think I had to do a lot of growing up. You know, when
Mm.
you're 19 and you're from a small town. My hometown never got over 1,700 people.
Oh wow.
So
Whew.
really tiny, little, you know, corn-fed town
Right.
in the Midwest, and uh, got to be exposed to a lot of different people and cultures, which was good. Um, so just like super white farmer country, got to meet everyone.
Sure.
Um, you got to deal with a lot of you learn a lot of patience in the military, as you can imagine, because a lot of times it's just sit down, shut up, and color. Like they don't care if you don't like what's happening. It's happening. You signed up for this, so
Right.
just
Right.
buckle up. So you learn to be you either grow from that or you really struggle through it. It's
Mm.
the whole the boiling water softens what softens the potato hardens the egg type deal. Like there's two different people, and those those catalysts will either drive you nuts or they'll humble you.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So
No kidding. As a young kid, I mean, you're just young. Like your whole interaction, your social skills, your interaction with authority, all that stuff, and then to just be dropped in the middle of it would
yeah,
have to be kind of rock your world.
yeah, because I mean I had friends in tech school, and they had they didn't like being told what to do, and I don't like being told to do either. My wife says it's I seem like the worst person to be in the military because I just have an issue with authority. But he did too. But some people know how to just go along to get along. It's not worth the extra pain to push back super hard. But they end up getting kicked out of the military for drug use, and you just end up maybe a little bitter, ready to get out at the end of it. So there's just two different
Sure.
types of ways to approach not wanting to be in anymore.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. What changed you the most, or what was the biggest change you got from it? Maybe I guess that's kind of the same. Uh, I think I
Uh,
was kind of talking about like what was the best aspect of it, but what what part of the military do you think changed you as a person the most? It is
I
difficult because like we're saying, you went in as a kid. Like
mhm.
some of what changed may have changed anyways. Like you got responsible. Well,
Yeah,
you're
I
gonna
guess
be, you know.
my little ADHD rant kind of flew off in a different way than I was intending it. But the being exposed to all the new people, you either become like I know some people that are still super like closed minded when it comes to different cultures and stuff, and um, they still think that everyone in the Middle East hates us because we're so free, and
Right, right.
they're all or like they're like a conservative that hates liberals, or they're a liberal that just is I guess just a masochist for joining the military, knowing that it's going to be a huge amount of conservatives, but they still joined it anyways. But
Sure.
some people learn from that. They see all these different perspectives and they go, well, this I don't hate this person, but I just learned that they have a different view than mine. So what's the issue? Why is it a problem that they have a different view than me? Because I
Right.
liked them before I learned that. So so
Huh.
I guess what I learned, I tried to become as morally consistent as possible. Um, and I think I learned to do that from my time in the military, wanting to, because you voice an opinion, and someone with a different cultural background or different just upbringing will be able to put you in your place because you're speaking out of ignorance. And
Sure.
I didn't like being put in my place because, again, issue with authority. So I just did a deep dive trying to become as morally consistent as possible.
Mm.
But unfortunately, that made me very not happy that I was in the military because you have to kind of close your ears and be like, I'm not gonna do some research into that because that might make me seem like I'm not doing the right thing.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that'd be difficult because
Mhm.
you're wanting to be consistent, but then yeah, if you learn too much,
Yeah.
then at best it would make your position much more difficult.
Yeah,
So
really, it's
that's
a real matrix red pill thing. It's like you're already questioning things. Are you going to take that pill and fully dive in and be afraid
right.
of? You might be afraid of what you find out, or you can
Yeah.
just continue to live a life of ignorance and bliss, thinking you're just in the right all the time because you're helping Uncle Sam.
Right. Right. Yeah, and a lot. I mean, you hear a lot people why people join or why they stay in, and a lot of their reasons are super um, honorable. Their
Hmm.
desires. They want to protect people and they want to serve people around them and be involved in protecting others and everything. And I mean, that's fantastic
Absolutely.
as a
Yeah.
desire. Yeah. So it's
Yeah, I know I want. That's why I wanted to join. I wanted to join when I was a kid, not to be a door kicker or necessarily like a gunslinger, but I wanted to
mm,
be the person that helped them, in their darkest times. Like I was like gun ho about like EOD or pararescue. Like I wanted to when our guys, when the men and women that are trying to fight for our freedoms get in a really tough situation, I wanted to be able to come in there and help them. That's what my motivation was for wanting to join the military. And didn't end
mm-hmm,
up happening, but all things happen for a reason. But I would definitely, if I would have gone into that that lifestyle, I probably would have stayed on that blue pill. I probably would have just been like, wouldn't have even questioned anything. Like I'm doing the right thing. I'm helping people because I mean you would be. You're helping military
right.
members,
Yeah.
so you would
Yeah.
have enough satisfaction and like confirmation that you're doing enough good stuff that you probably wouldn't even ever question
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like you're saying, that's super consistent with your desires. You're actively helping those who are like right now in trouble and they need help right now. And you're
it. Hmm.
there to save them. And that's, yeah, especially as a kid. It's, well, I guess it's kind of like wanting to be a firefighter, right? Or a paramedic. It's a little
Hmm.
different from wanting to be a gunslinger, like you're saying, but where your goal is like there's people dying or hurt, and I'm gonna go rescue them, but just do it with the military instead of like the fire department or something.
That's right.
But, huh? Yeah, that would have been. I think. No, I thought I knew somebody at one time that was, but I don't think I ever have known a PJ. That'd be quite the adrenaline rush, I would think. Like
Yeah,
you hear
those
about
those
guys
people
in
are hardcore.
Vietnam. Yeah, you hear about guys in Vietnam who would be in a helicopter and they'd hover over the jungle, and then they'd sit on a chair and get lowered into the jungle,
Yeah.
or like a heavy weighted like spear point kind of thing, and just
Hmm.
get lowered into the jungle and into the middle of who knows what because you can't really see what's going on.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty impressive.
Yeah. My adrenaline junkie-ness as a teenager and even into my young early 20s was like, man, Halo, like night vision, behind enemy
Right.
lines, like that huge adrenaline boner. But it was just like ended up ended up just following a path to try to make sure that my family wasn't stressed or my girlfriend at the time wasn't stressed, and I ended up here. But I wouldn't have met my
Yeah.
wife if I didn't take this path. I wouldn't have my son if I didn't take this path, and I might not have come to any kind of like moral conclusions that I have now if I didn't take this path. So it's even though I didn't get my goals, my life goals, my dreams got like completely rerouted by people who maybe didn't have the best intentions for me, but I'm happy with the life I have now.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good viewpoint. I was talking to somebody and they were talking about, and it's common, but they were just saying the past is the past. Like you can't change it, and any distress or time you spend being concerned about the past is just time wasted.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean,
you
would you sacrifice? Would you give up the friends you have, the wife you have, the anything that you have now because you most likely you would not have gotten that if you would have chosen the different path that you're still hung up on. So maybe just be
sure.
happy with what you got, not what you missed.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that's a good viewpoint. it's easy to talk about. It can be hard to apply.
Yep.
Yeah. You can always come back and be like, oh man, 5 years ago, if I just done that. It's like, well,
Yeah.
but sometimes you can learn from those, right? Whether it be through advising other people or even just as you continue through life, you can take principles or concepts that you could have applied 5 or 10 years ago and be like, okay, in the future, I should
Mhm.
probably follow these
I
principles.
definitely wasn't like that in the beginning of my military service. Was salty. I got screwed over. These recruiters just don't tell you the truth. Like all the tropes of being in the
Yeah.
military. But eventually, I got so tired of being angry that I was just decided that being angry is not worth it. I can't hold grudges against people because it's just like, man, you're someone that just got boned by someone else trying to bone me. Like that mindset really changed when I had my son, because it's just like,
Mm,
oh, I can see you as a 2-year old, and someone was a dick to you, so now you're like, life got steered in a different direction, and now you have these issues that you're not dealing with. So it's like, why would I be mad at you? I can see 2-year old you in your eyes. I can tell exactly what age you were when someone was mean to you, and I wouldn't be mad at my son if someone was mean to him, and I would want to correct that. So it's like, it makes it really hard for me to hold animosity towards people anymore.
mm, hmm, huh. Speaking of, I guess I reference it, but speaking of like advising other people, if a kid was to ask you, "Hey, I'm thinking about going in the military. What's your advice?" I'm maybe I should say I'm planning on going in the military. What's your advice? What would you say to that?
Well, uh, my go-to would probably be to not, but a more detailed. I guess I would start by asking them, why? Like, do you want to help people? There's a lot better ways to help people. Are
Mm,
you trying to have like life experiences, um, uh, or like the financial freedoms of you know tax free pay while you're in the Middle East for however long you're over there, because that's a big magnet for people. Um, I think most situations there's a better route to achieve the wants you have inside you. Um, if you want to travel, if you want to see the world, you could easily gain a trade, live very conservatively with your income, and have the money to go travel, but you don't have to you know shave your head or maintain a grooming standard of your. You can have a beard, you can have whatever hair you want, you know,
right.
and you could go whenever you want to and come back whenever you want to. I think there's a lot more freedoms to change your mind when you're trying to achieve the goals you have.
Mm,
Because once you
hmm.
sign that paperwork, raise your hand and swear in, like they got you for however long you signed up for, and you might get tired of it, but it's tough luck. You gotta suffer through it. If you
Hmm.
were a civilian and you tried to pursue the goals you wanted to pursue in the military through a non-military route, then if you realize after maybe 6 months or a year, oh, I don't really like this career path, you'd be like, I guess I'll go do something else.
Right. Right. Yeah. Huh. Where
It's a
even in
real
the air.
commitment.
What's that? Go ahead.
It's a real commitment you might not fully understand at the age you are when you typically join the military.
Sure. Yeah. 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 But when you're 18, you got your whole life in front of you. So, you know, I do chuckle a little that I bothered to ask that question because 18-year-olds aren't going to listen to advice, let alone seek it. So,
I
I
mean,
mean,
if
hope
you still
the wise ones do, but
if you still want to when you're in your late 20s or 30s, like, I mean, I guess go for it, but like, don't give someone else the best years that you have. Like your best physical, like your peak, like when you're in your 20s, like you're at your peak physically.
Mm-hmm.
You're a little green, to the universe, and you should maybe gain a little bit of experience before you make something like a commitment that big. Like I would give the same advice to my son about getting married. Like it's a huge commitment. Maybe
Sure.
live a little bit of your life outside of your house, before, like outside your parents' house, before you decide that this is the thing you want to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Hmm. You mentioned a couple times the consistency of your morals and how as you looked into stuff, your viewpoint changed. Um, however far you want to get into it, but more specifically, um how did your interaction with the Air National Guard change? Like as your viewpoints and your beliefs shifted a little bit, how did that affect your relationships at work or with command or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, probably the initial part that really started to make me uh, look more into, I guess, a different moral leaning or like philosophy, or um, I mentioned once before already that I was in the honor guard, um,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
is providing funeral services for carrying caskets and folding flags and whatnot, and that's a real humbling experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our our team was averaging 500 burials a year almost, and uh, the teammates themselves were probably doing about 150 to 175 a year, like being on various funeral services.
Right.
So, because and they weren't, it was mostly like retirees. Like we didn't do a lot of like you died
Oh, sure.
overseas. So it's a lot of Vietnam vets. It's your occasional World War II vets that are still around. But you really have to turn it off. You can't have any kind of a emotional
Right.
response when the the mom or the wife or the kid is crying. You have to
Right.
look them. Part of the ceremony is looking them square in the eye and saying, you know, on behalf of the President of the United States, the United States Air Force, and a truly grateful nation, like please accept this flag for the honorable and faithful service of your loved one. And you're
Right.
supposed to just have no emotional response,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that takes a little bit of you every time you do that. You're giving that to them, and eventually it becomes harder to do that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you start to look at humanity a little differently when you see the effects of it, even for people who didn't die there. Like
Mm-hmm.
it,
Yeah. Yeah. These are people
it's,
who it was totally unrelated to the military and expected, like they died of old age or something. It's not like they got blown up or something. Yeah.
and you start to look into it, and you start to do research, and uh, it kind of coalesced with me changing my political views to more libertarian, and then like voluntarist, we'll call it. It's the nicer
Mm-hmm.
name for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you're sitting there, and these people are so happy that you're there because at, they're so happy that there's these strangers at their loved one's funeral because they're so happy that they served, and you're like, I'm not happy, I'm serving. So
Right. Right.
it's a weird dichotomy of like they're so happy you're there, and you're like, I'm here for you, but otherwise I'm not really enjoying this at any point.
Hmm.
Uh, so that was it was hard to give that much when you really didn't have the heart in it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was proud to do that. At least I could give family members that back from the military taking 10, 20 years of their time away from their family member.
Mm-hmm.
Could at least tell them thank you. So that
Hmm.
the that changed. That experience was a real like changed my perspective on a lot of things. Um, you spend a lot of time in a van driving to the locations because they're all over your state,
Sure.
so you get to reflect a lot. Um, it wasn't just like moving and grooving. I didn't have time to think about it. I was just doing it. Like you get time to think about it. So
Is 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 the mood in the van, because it's all you all travel together, right?
mhm.
Is the mood in the van different on the way to the service than it was on the way home?
uh,
Or are you just kind of in the mood the whole time?
I mean, it's relatively lighthearted. It wasn't until near the end of my time doing that that I was having a harder time with it. Um, the
Okay.
the last the last few, yeah, for the most part, the van was joking and listening to music because you just you you like just sectioned it off. Like I'm in the van, I'm with my
Right.
my buddies, I'm at a funeral and being very professional. You don't think about the fact that there's someone in this casket. You're just going to fold this flag methodically, like you've done 100 times. You're going to say that you're going to look through them. You're not going to really try to like read their face. You're going to say what you got to say, and you're going to head
Hmm.
back off and drive back to base. So it wasn't. It was like I said. It was. I did that for 3 years. Um, it probably wasn't until the last couple months where it started to become hard. And then even after I came off the team, they had me come back to do a couple because some of the funerals were a lot closer to me. So there
Oh,
was,
just to fill in or whatever.
yeah. So there was people that were from my unit that died, and
Oh,
so
closer, like
they were
emotionally, or
closer emotionally. Yeah.
gotcha. I
So
thought you meant fit in geographically.
yeah,
Hmm.
there was three people who all died in an accident together, and I helped because there was such a huge load because three people at once that are all on active duty orders. So the active duty funeral is a lot more. They get a lot more than if they were just retired or
Sure.
separated. They get
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
firing party, they get the 8-man casket carry versus the six, and uh, all the bells and whistles. So
Sure.
um, I helped with one of those, and that was like more close, but again, they were just people I knew of that were in my unit. But then a couple months later, we had someone who was actually I spent about a year and a half together with on the honor guard die in a motorcycle accident. So
Mm,
I did his funeral. So I carried someone that I spent hours in a car together with,
right.
um, and that
Hmm.
one was hard. That one was actually hard because everyone that was at the funeral, like, you pretty much knew. And
It's
then
hard, more difficult to zone out and look through them
yeah,
because
you
everywhere you
can't.
look is a familiar face.
Yeah, you can't just. It's harder to close off when your whole base is there
Right.
and they're all thanking you, and
Hmm.
the the chaplain's all tore up because they're friends too. So it's like between the
Right.
chaplain crying in the building before the funeral, and
Right.
then like because you're all in this like sectioned off like from the
Sure.
rest of the funeral waiting for the start, and he's
Yeah.
having a hard time. And then
Hmm.
just a couple months after that, I had someone that I was a direct supervisor of uh, die in an accident just the day after his birthday. He had just turned 22. He was just
Hmm.
a bright, peppy kid that
Yeah. Yeah.
he was turning his life around. He was done with all of his training. He was just waiting for time to promote, and he was going back to college, and he wanted to be like a youth pastor. And then like 2 days after the last time I saw him, I just get a phone call like, "Hey, he
Hmm.
died. Like, we don't know what happened." And then I know I had
Hmm.
to I did his funeral and gave the flag to his mom, who
Yeah.
you know they live 15 minutes down the road from me. So after that, that changed my perspective a lot on what I felt. Like they tried to ask me to come back, and I was
Sure.
like, I can't. Like this is when I was in the honor guard, it was one thing. These last three funerals have really changed what
Right.
uh, doing these funerals means for me, and I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, the personal impact. Uh, That'd be tough. What aside before those three, like when you were doing it more regularly, is there a specific one that really sticks out, or was it just kind of not, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but was it just more of like a production kind of thing where when you don't know people there, it's understandable, especially when you're trying to keep that professionalism, that you wouldn't make a connection with a particular service, particular memorial or funeral. But was there one or a couple that really stick out?
Yeah, I mean, people do weird stuff no matter what the setting is. So like, you see some strange things at a funeral, and
Mm,
you pick up patterns and you like highlight them, and it's kind of funny. Like you know that if it's a grandfather and there's this big tough bubble looking guy with head shaved, glasses on, standing in the back like he's all hard, like that's the grandson. And
right.
I bet you $20 that when Taps plays that he's gonna cry. And he
Oh,
does almost every time because he's trying to act tough, and then Taps playing at Pappy's funeral is just
right.
too much for him. Um, but
Huh.
I mean, there was some silly stuff. Southern preachers are weird. That some of them like to get a little crazy.
Right.
Um, we've had like pretty hard headed uh, funeral directors that will be like, we'll have there's certain organizations like the VFW or the American Legion that basically are just old, salty, retired people that want to help do funerals still, so they show up in their their uniform, even though they're like in their 60s or 70s, and they usually insist on going first, because they're old and they're in a full military uniform and it's hot because it's the South, so
Right. Right.
they uh, and you kind of just you let that happen, like whatever they say, like you're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, you guys are old. We don't want you guys getting hurt at a funeral. That wouldn't be good.
Right.
But
Sure.
one funeral director was insistent on them waiting until after the preacher, and so they're standing there, and sure enough, one of them ends up passing out, falling over
No.
at the funeral, and one of the guys on our team, he was a former, he's like a sear washout. Happens a lot. Like, you just don't make it through, or you get an injury and you just don't
Sure.
get to continue. um, but so he knew a lot of like medical stuff, and the preacher runs over, or the funeral director runs over and tries to start giving this guy CPR. It's like, he didn't stop breathing; he passed out.
Yeah.
So this guy, he runs over. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You're gonna kill him. Like, you're gonna put him in the cardiac arrest
Right.
because you're doing chest compressions when he doesn't need it."
Right. And he's like,
So
"Well, I know how to do one medical thing, and that's my
yeah,
go-to."
I've watched people do CPR on TV. I know what I'm doing.
Oh, dude. I mean, there's a lot of things you see in movies that are inaccurate and just bug you, but
Hmm.
CPR is one of them. I've never seen, and for good reason. I mean, CPR hurts people. So,
Yeah,
but I've never seen it in a movie or anything where it's like accurate, where you're doing like 1/8 inch compressions. Yeah, or your elbows are
yeah,
bending or whatever. It's just like, this is not at all realistic. But
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. No,
Maybe that
like,
guy knew, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. If you're doing chest compressions, they say like you should be basically breaking their sternum
Right,
because
right,
you're
exactly.
trying to manually manipulate their lungs.
Right, right. But if you don't, I mean, if you're doing, if it's in the proper situation, if you don't do it, they're dead. So they're essentially dead already. So breaking their sternum is a benefit, if you're successful, which I think it's a pretty low success rate.
Yeah, we had
But
someone at basic training really like some military, makes you a little callous and you don't understand what you're saying sometimes, or at least the tone you're saying it in. we were at basic training, and we were talking about like CPR and self-aid buddy care and stuff like that. And he asked if anyone had done CPR, and someone raised their hand because they were a volunteer firefighter, I believe. And he talked about how he had to do chest compressions on this woman that got in a car accident, and he goes, "Did she end up surviving?" And he said, "No, sir." And then he goes, "Were you pushing hard enough to break the bones in her, like basically crack her sternum?" He goes, "No." And he goes, "Well, I mean, that's probably why." So it's like he
Oh
just like
man.
just talking matter of factly about the class, but he just full on just said like, "Yeah, she died because you fucked up."
Oh man.
He didn't. It just went over his head. He didn't realize what he just said. And that guy was like, "Oh man, like."
Right. Oh yeah, my rant derailed this. You were talking about what happened to the dude or the person who fainted. The
I think
the
he
funeral
was.
director was staved off, hopefully, and
Yes, the guy just. Yeah, the guy on the honor guard team just said like, "Get off him, like elevate his legs, like flip him over, like he needs to get out of the sun."
sure.
I think he had to get stitches or a false tooth. I mean, he just fell like flat forward on his face,
Oh man. Yeah.
but
Well, because
he ended up being fine. We ended up seeing him a couple feet like weeks later at a funeral, like helping out. So,
sure.
but yeah, there was some people are difficult, and you have to learn how to you have to learn how to deal with a lot of different kinds of personalities, especially in the
Right.
honor guard because you get real strong-willed funeral directors that think they're almighty.
Right. Right.
You have to be super professional. You're not allowed to insist on any kind of order of the events at a funeral because it's like
Sure.
you're not there for you. You're there for the family, so it's whatever they want.
Right. And the funeral
Which
director is usually their mouthpiece,
yeah,
technically,
yeah,
at least.
sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes they're speaking for themselves,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, you have to learn how to speak to people, and I have no problem being the best doing the best I can for whatever the family wants because like that's who you're there for. You're not there for the guy in the casket. You're not there for you. You're there for the family members, and you're putting on a show for the family members. That's all you're doing. I mean, you might say like you're paying respects to him in the casket, but in reality, you're trying to help the family have some kind of peace of mind. And
Yeah.
you know, I was really hard on, or like I beat that real hard because I ended up being like the trainer for a time and had to
Right.
kick people off the team because they weren't taking it seriously. It's like like the you want to send your phone a text while we're practicing. Like I have no sympathy for that. Like we only get one shot
Right.
with each
Right.
family. Like you might do 150 funerals in a year, but you're only doing one funeral for that family, and they're only getting one funeral for that guy. So
Right.
you have to do it right.
You can't do a retake.
No, you don't get a
Yeah.
second shot.
Hmm.
You get 150 first shots.
Yeah.
One shot.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that uh even for um even for the philosophy of voluntarism or what however that applies to the military and the war and everything, or the military and war, excuse me, still, especially like an older a retiree or something who passed away, like that's a super honorable and still respectful thing to do. It's not like you're out
Yeah.
selling war bonds or actively
No.
recruiting people. You're
Yeah. And
stuff
I
has
don't. I don't
happened.
have
So
any.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't have any like malice towards people in the military. Like some people who have like a
Sure.
libertarian or anarchist or voluntarist or whatever terms they want to go by. They have like a lot of malice towards military members or police or like any kind of like public servant, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's a reason there's so much money that goes into that propaganda. Like it works. Like they get you. You believe you're doing
Right.
all the good things. Like you're serving a good cause. You're helping people, and I don't. And I fell victim to that. I got duped a little bit, thinking I was just, saving the world one small research paper at a time. and if you do enough research, you kind of learn that that's not true. But I'm not gonna be like ACAB or like spitting on soldiers or even like
Sure.
mad at them because they just haven't come to that conclusion. And if you are like that, you're just going to push them further to their side. You're just going to make them more ironclad. But if you come to them with like little pieces of like, yeah, but what about this? But what about this? You make people question what they're doing in a respectful way. They don't. I just don't think that they are being or showing malice. Like there's no malice in what they're doing. They think they're helping. They think they're doing the best they can,
Right.
making this valiant sacrifice. But so yeah, I still paid a lot of respect to retirees and whatnot, because it's like,
Sure.
like I like good for you for sacrificing so much. Like I wish your time could have not been in vain helping something that isn't necessarily
Sure.
what you think it is or thought it was. Like you guys are the, they say the military is like top 1%, or like your top tier operators. You're like you just think like, what if all of these really bright, strong men and women use their powers and talents and abilities in a way that wasn't serving the government? If they, went into some kind of business venture or charity, or if the system was in place to actually be beneficial, to have police and first responders, like they got to actually help as much as they should be able to help. Like your time could have really, really, really helped people, and it's kind of a shame that this big propaganda machine stole that from you and from everyone around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't feel mad at them or any malice towards them, or I'm more just cynical towards the system that squandered what they gave to them.
Yeah. 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 And especially if you're at their funeral, they've already passed, and their family. I mean, this is a hard time for their family. Respect is natural and beneficial to them too. I mean, if you had some kind of, well, what about this? You're not there for that. So
there's a time and place.
Yeah.
That's
For sure.
definitely not the place. What are you going to gain from it?
Yeah. What was kind of the main impetus that uh that switched your philosophy over to more of voluntarism? Was there one, or was it multiple, or?
It was again, it was me thinking I knew everything as a a conservative, or what people would call conservative. Like I didn't know what political party was what until I think I was 20. I think I looked up like which political party has the donkey, like which ones. Like I literally had
right
so little care for what was going on politically that I did not know what color was to which party, what party stood for what the symbols meant, like
right
none of that. So like
right
I missed my first opportunity to vote because I turned 18, like I think it was like 2 months before voting, so I could have signed up for it, but I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't care.
right
But so yeah, I just had like a very hoorah America mindset, and I learned in the military that that's called being a Republican. So I'm like, I guess I'm kind of like that, but not completely. Like there's a lot of things that they do that I don't necessarily feel like I can defend, or when I try to think of it, I'm like, yeah, but I feel like there's some intelligence, or like some like gaps in the thinking. So I was just
sure
like what? And then like when I tried to fight like defend the positions that I did believe in at the time, someone with a different view who did more research, just like, yeah, but what about this? And you're like, oh, shit, I didn't even think about that. So,
Right.
so I just didn't like losing debates. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do research into the things that I can't defend properly. And then
Right.
I guess that research has made it so I couldn't defend them because I'm like, yeah, I was wrong. Um, then I
Right.
got turned on to some libertarian-based economics YouTube channels, and then found podcasts related to those people,
Sure.
and became a libertarian. And everyone in those podcasts were, anarchists. So, but I was like, I'm not an anarchist. Like that's a little extreme. And then
Right.
you listen to viewpoints from that, and you hear their arguments that dismantle your adhere like reasons you wouldn't want to have that view. And you're like, oh yeah, I guess I'm just believe in voluntary human action. Like if an interaction between one person and another person isn't voluntary, it's wrong in one way or another.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of what I came down to, being the most morally consistent. You just go, well, everyone is an individual. Everyone has just as much claim to something, or to like life and liberty, as anyone else. So where there's an equal connection between their rights and your rights, that's as much rights as you got. And that's pretty
Oh,
much the only
right.
mindset I have. Yeah.
Huh.
Like the whole your rights stop where my nose starts. Like you can swing your fist around, but as soon as it hits me in the face, like you're in the wrong.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, it's interesting because on a on just like a personal interaction level, that's kind of commonly accepted. You know,
Yeah.
the concept of like just voluntary interaction. Like we don't we don't take a vote to find out which brand of cereal we should buy or something. But for
Yeah.
some
Or
reason, when it comes to government,
even
what's that?
say, or if enough people vote to steal from you, then it's fine. You know,
Right?
like
Yeah.
oh well,
Yeah.
there was just you on the road, and there was five people mugging you, so that's democracy.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, when it shifts to government, or what currently falls under government, and there may be an argument for this. I'm leaving it open, but for some reason, when it moves to that kind of a question, all of a sudden all the rules and concepts around human interaction adjust and change, and um, it's usually just assumed that that's logical, and there's really no
Yeah,
effort made to explain why things are so different.
yeah. It's people try to talk about greater good or social contracts, but it's like I wouldn't kill anyone just because they inconvenienced society. There's like
Sure.
a story of like an advisor to the White House during the '80s that was trying to figure out how to like negate any kind of like nuclear conflict. He's like, well, what if we took the nuclear codes, put it in a pill, and then we had someone who was always around the president, and we put that surgically implanted that pill next to his heart, and then he carried around a knife. And if the president wanted to start a nuclear war, he would have to literally stab an innocent person to start a nuclear war. And all the other advisors, like, that's insane. If the president had to kill someone to start a nuclear war, then he would never do it. You're like, yeah, that's the point. He doesn't realize how many people he would like. There's a
Right.
disconnect. Like there's like an apathy towards the lives of people you can't see.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that before. Yeah, I like illustrations that approach something from a different angle, that take a popular, or not popular, excuse me. They take a common everyday assumption and apply it to an entirely new situation, or you see it from a different way. And uh this isn't a direct comparison, but similar to how um oh, I'm so retarded. Was it Hitler or Stalin who said 100 deaths is a tragedy, a million is a statistic? I forget who it was exactly.
I've heard that phrase. I don't know
Yeah, yeah.
where it comes
I'm
from.
sure every other listener is reading right now at the speaker,
Yeah,
but
you probably quoted some kind of humanitarian person. And you're like, it's either Stalin or Hitler.
yeah, 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 it could be. I'm pretty sure it's one of them. But my point is that you're kind of applying the same principle with that, where you're taking like nuclear war. Even advocates for it, or people that say it's terrible but it's justifiable, they would recognize that it's terrible, even if it
Yeah.
is in their mind just a statistic. The level of death would be terrible. But then, like you're saying, when you take that and apply it to just a single individual person, all of a sudden that's unconscionable. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, yeah,
it's the opposite for human interaction, like we just talked about. Like the government or the military, it's like killing 1,000 people that you don't know in a different country. You're like, oh, 1,000 people in a different country. But like, if another person just randomly, like if a human being like me or you just went to another country, stabbed 1,000 people in like
right,
China, and then came back, you're like, you're insane. But like, there'd almost be more justification to like kill one person as a human being who's lives a lot closer to you, because they might be like a threat to you. Like someone might be encroaching on your rights. Someone might be trying to rob you, and if you shot them, you'd be like, yeah. But like, so it's like,
sure,
as things become further away and more numerous as a human being, you're like, that's weird, that's unjustified. But like, when the
hmm.
government does it, it's like, yeah, that's just what the government does. Like there was probably a reason. They
Right,
probably
right.
some blanket like check. It was justified.
Kind of transferring the responsibility, I guess,
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't.
to a group.
You're less likely to call fouls on a sports team that you like versus a team that
Yeah,
you don't. So
yeah.
you're like, I'm sure he had a reason to do that.
Right, right. And that's um even if I've found a lot of value, even if I disagree with a position, there is a lot of value in, or an opinion, a position or opinion, or whatever. There's a lot of
Mhm.
value in being able to step out of my shoes and step into their shoes and look at the situation from their side, from their viewpoint. If Even if for nothing else than to just understand where they're coming from. Um
Yeah,
and be open
definitely.
to that changing my viewpoint. But if I just remain in my shoes and never consider it from their viewpoint, it really limits my ability to interact with them. To
Yeah.
say that if you haven't considered what they have to say, then it's difficult to be consistent with them in discussion.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's easier to bridge a gap with someone that you're having a discussion with, and you can almost make them see it from your position more if you start from their position. Like if you're trying to talk to a conservative about borders, and you're like, man, there's all these people, there's all these jobs right now. Like job market's great, but there's all these people that are on unemployment that don't want to. This is me speaking as how a conservative would it like stereotypically think.
Right, right.
It's like all these people are on food stamps, and there's all these jobs. Just get a job. It's like, okay, well, we could get more people to work for less. It's just open up the borders. Like they're like
Right.
you, you're mad all these libs want $15 an hour, or they're just going to stay on food stamps. And you're like, or you could just have someone who's going to work a lot harder come in, but you don't want that. So it's like
Right.
you like, let me try to approach some concept from to appeal to you in a way that you something you're like want to have happen. Like you don't like this and you don't like this, but like one would solve the other.
Right. Right. And there may be very very good arguments, or very good reasons, excuse me, for a conservative or liberal to hold a specific position on a specific issue.
Yeah,
What bothers me is when they're literally their only reason for holding a position is because the other side holds the opposite on that position. It's like,
I don't.
that's kind of
I don't.
dumb. Like,
I don't have any sympathy for like your view is only that view because you decided in your early adulthood, I am this political leaning. So
Right.
I have these views and I hate those views because I'm a Republican or because I'm a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a Democrat, I have to hate these views. And if you don't like my views, you're a horrible person. And then
Right.
vice versa. It's like that.
Right.
Your views should be as individual as you are, and they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Sure.
people want the easy way out. They want the lazy way of just like copy and paste Republican to me, copy and paste Democrat to me. Just
Right.
like do some free thinking for
Right.
God's sake.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. 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 Like, well, it's kind of stepping back a bit, but like, recognizing the similarities between being pro drug and pro gun, but
mhm,
those are traditionally positions
opposite.
held by opposite ends of the spectrum,
Yeah,
and they're opposed typically, not always. Whatever they are pro, they're generally opposed to the opposite, to the other one, excuse me, because generally, specifically because the other side holds that position.
yeah.
And
There's no moral difference between thinking that someone should be able to do whatever they want with their body, and being able to defend your body by whatever
mm,
means you
right,
see fit.
right,
Like
right,
it's all about like autonomy, and the government shouldn't be punishing you for decisions you're making when you're not harming anyone. Like the whole like I'm a gun owner, my gun doesn't kill anyone. Like I just put it down, it doesn't shoot anyone because I'm a responsible gun owner. It's like
right,
yeah, and this guy who smokes pot in his house is not killing anyone. There are
right,
people
right,
who kill people with guns, and there are people who get into a car accident doing drugs or like become
sure,
violent on drugs, but like not as a whole. Not the unit as a whole does not do that, and even in the majority don't do that.
right, right,
Like if every drug user killed people by being reckless in a vehicle accident, that issue would solve itself. Like all
yeah,
the drug users would die.
yeah, right. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe at enormous cost, but
Yeah,
true. Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, huh. Well, I may get some hate mail over this, but I don't usually like discuss my own opinions on it. I try to keep it about the guests, so hopefully it doesn't backfire. But
I don't know. I think the
cool.
the media circles that seem to find each other in would be chill with it.
Yeah, for
So
sure. For sure. And that's one of the goals of why I started the show is, speaking of media, the average American in the media is never going to hear your viewpoint, and they're rarely going to hear anything outside of the typical standard, like da, 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 this is exactly what a veteran um is, or like, or does, or believes, or whatever. You're
I'm not your typical Dakota Meyer or
right.
uh, whatever the Tim Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, I don't know, the MMA fighter, something
Oh,
Kennedy.
I don't know his name. It's Tim or Ted, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and there went
I
the
mean, I
other
think.
half of the listeners for because we don't know.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
He,
I
yeah,
have the
he's
worst name regulate.
right.
Or I'm so bad with names. I like people. I'll see people outside of military uniform. And I'm like, I don't even remember your last name. But you have spent the last 2 years with seeing your last name on your name tag. I
Right,
don't even remember what it is.
right,
Sorry.
exactly. Oh, wow. Huh. Yeah. Crazy. Do you have anything to plug or anything you want to know,
uh,
or
yeah. I mean, my my Twitter handle will be in your post on Twitter, and I think my Instagram, which I have a lot more followers on, is linked to that as well. But it's just mostly memes. There's nothing else on there but memes. Um, uh, Looking forward to Childerberg.
oh, hot
Get,
dog. Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
yeah, Childerberg's a big fan of Childerberg. My
Sweet.
first time, I'm hoping to go there. That's so
You
plug in Childerberg, plug in my Twitter.
you say you have been or not?
have not been.
Oh, okay.
Had
Oh,
full
yeah.
to go last year, just didn't pan out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a blast. I'm really looking forward to it.
awesome.
So, yeah, well, cool. Thanks, man. Any final words or wrap up or anything to end on?
No, man. I'm just living my life now. So I'm just, I guess, just be morally consistent to all the listeners. Just
Yeah.
pursue beliefs you have to their inevitable end, their moral conclusion, and you'll see that like maybe you have some inconsistencies to work out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
You don't make a lot of friends when you have the viewpoints that people like me do.